I'm Raymond. You're watching RPadTV, and today we're going to talk about Deadpool and Wolverine, which was originally supposed to be called Deadpool and Friend, but apparently that didn't test well. With me today are two of my very favorite people. On the top left, we have Paul Semel. On the top right, we have Marcus Beer Pool. How are you doing, gentlemen?
Good. Oh wait, are we showing off our toys already?
Let's polish our Deadpools. Mine's bigger than yours.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, but I know how to use mine.
Well, I know how to use mine too. What I do is I do this, and there you go. I used it. What do you do with yours, you bloody pervert?
Do you
Wouldn't you like to know?
Do you masturbate with it?
Masturbate.
That is my favorite new word I've learned in 2024. So, of course, we're going to talk about Deadpool and Wolverine. There are going to be a lot of spoilers going forward. You have been warned. Before we get into things, let's do an update. Marcus, how have you been, and what is new and exciting in your life? It has been too long.
Nothing. Nothing is new. Nothing is exciting. It's hot. It's hot here in Southern California, for God's sake. It was, I don't know, 90 something today, and I'm not made for this crap. But I have iced water. So no, look, I'm good. I'm good. I'm still ticking. Can't really argue with anything. Yeah, just waiting to win the Mega Millions and then say bye-bye, bitches.
You have some fancy new lighting too. Room looks great.
Well, yeah, I mean, that did go in a few months ago, but you just haven't seen me since. I'm just trying to figure out my camera angle. But yeah, I just rejigged the room to make it better for streaming. This was actually debuted over not E3 weekend when I did something with Shane Satterfield and Mr. Pachter.
Yeah, that was good stuff. A blast from the past.
It was old people talking about games.
And Paul,
yes, sir.
Expecting a prop-filled update.
Oh, yeah, okay. As always. So, same old with we lost Marcus. This was a bit of a light week on paulsemel.com, but there's a lot of good stories coming up next week. I interviewed one of the editors of this anthology called Tomorrow's Troopers, which is a whole collection of sci-fi stories with power armor, including ones by Harry Harrison and Joe Haldeman. A lot of classics in there. And then also did an interview with a writer named S.M. Sterling, who he wrote a time travel novel in which a bunch of kids and their college professor go back in time to the Roman Empire in an attempt to stop World War III.
Wow.
Not really sure how that works, but the interviews will be up next week along with a couple others, and
looking forward to those. What was the name of the first author again?
The anthology?
Yes.
Oh, it's called Tomorrow's Troopers. It's out next Tuesday. And like I said, it's all like stories about, people in power armor, kind of Iron Man-y kind of stuff. But it's all classic like science fiction stories, like reprints from different people, including a somewhat well-known one called Hero by Joel Haldeman, which has inspired him to write a novel called The Forever War, which has been a huge influence on a lot of different people, including the people who made the Halo games, for those of you who care about those things. Which I know Marcus does not, but I do. So.
I've just never been into Halo. I've tried. I mean, look, I appreciate that everybody, a lot of people do like it, and I understand for a lot of people, especially on the OG Xbox, it was their first experience of a shooter, because I mean that was pretty much the domain of the PC, and still should be. But not my cup of tea. I was playing grown-up games back then, and I still am.
So, guys, check out those stories on paulsemel.com. You see the URL below. But if you're really lazy, there's a convenient link in the description. We're going to be talking about Deadpool and Wolverine, big concepts, really granular, nerdy stuff. But, of course, we want to start with a thread size review. I don't want to use X anymore as much as possible. Paul, sum up Deadpool and Wolverine in a
Okay.
thread.
And I did check that this does fit. If you like the first 2 Deadpool movies, you'll like Deadpool and Wolverine just as much, even though it's sillier. If you liked Logan or the better X-Men movies, you'll find Deadpool and Wolverine to be a very different Wolverine movie, but still a good Wolverine movie. And if you like the first 2 Wolverine movies, well, I can't really help you there.
Do you use that voice in your thoughts?
That's my radio voice.
How about you, Marcus? Give me a thread size review.
Thread size review, and I'll use my special voice as well. My thread size review is cameos, awesome fight scenes, still silly storyline, if there is one, lots of awesomeness, in sync, Madonna, thumbs up.
Oh, very different styles, but both very good.
I've seen more Blue Sky than Thread, but okay.
I'm actually going to start doing this going forward and actually post a thread with my review. So I'm going with, after 2 viewings, I've come to the conclusion that Deadpool and Wolverine is the most action-packed, hilarious, and Easter egg-filled comic book movie ever made, bound together by the thinnest of plots. I think
That's valid.
Yeah, I would, yeah.
I think every single one of our reviews is pretty much on point because we're professionals. We know what we're doing.
Well, I don't know. I might try to get my amateur status back so I can review in the next Olympics. That is the plan anyway. So let's start with some large concepts, broad concepts. Marcus, what was your single most favorite aspect of Deadpool and Wolverine?
The fights. I thought it was absolutely the best set of fight scenes that you've had in the MCU, and that even includes previous Deadpools, which obviously kind of pushed the envelope. And that very first fight scene in the first Deadpool was actually quite legendary.
Yeah.
It was let's count it down, boom, boom, boom. But these were just, every single fight scene was absolutely on point, awesome. It's like, and I kind of feel sorry for the Acolyte, because the Acolyte had really a great episode devoted to there's pretty much one awesome fight scene. And then Deadpool and Wolverine turns up and says, this is what happens when you do it with blood and dismemberment, and kind of won the day. So, yes, the fight scenes.
And you, Paul?
Well, I mean, for me, the humor, of course, is always a big part. Ryan Reynolds, I think, is always really great as Deadpool. Hugh Jackman is always great at Wolverine. Seeing the 2 of them together is really, really great. But I knew all that stuff was going to be great going in, because it was the last couple of times we've seen these guys. The thing that stood out for me really was Emma Corrin as Cassandra. She was just fantastic, and just totally dominated those scenes, even with Deadpool and Wolverine in them. I mean, just the way she carried herself. There's this idea in storytelling that bad guys never think they're the bad guys. They always think they're the hero of their story, and that's how you should play it. You shouldn't play it like a bad guy. And she played Cassandra like she knew she was a bad guy. She just didn't care, because it was, she still thought she was, doing good for herself, but
right.
She sort of delighted in hurting other people and basically dominating, all those little underlings of hers,
Right. And using that example of the bad guy that thinks they're in the right, Magneto might be the best example of that. So Cassandra is on the opposite end of that spectrum.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. And just the way she played it. I mean, there's a moment in the movie. This might strike people as weird, but she's sort of standing in front of Wolverine, and she subdues him, and she does this thing with her fingers where she kind of goes
yes.
that. And I don't know why, but I just loved that moment. There was something so vicious about it, but also at the same time reminded me of the conductor at of an orchestra, and it was just such a cool moment. And so
it actually reminded me.
That was in the trailer as well.
Was it in the trailer? Okay, yeah.
But it's that what?
It was it was just the viciousness with the way she did it and the determination that was just so good.
It actually reminded me of Magneto's hand movements from the older X-Men movies when he would be like bang and all that.
Right.
But what Emma did was especially impressive because they had prosthetic fingers throughout the movie. Did you notice how she had those freaky deaky long fingers?
Yeah, I in fact, there's an article where they were talking to her about that, and she was like it was weird because I couldn't go to the bathroom by myself. Like I had to get help, like because she couldn't, like, whatever she had to do. So
is that a credit on the film, Emma Corrin's wiper?
I think it was just the costume designer or whatever.
Yeah, it would have been the
taking care of them. Yeah,
being silly, but yeah, I thought they brought a lot to the table. I don't think, and nothing to do with performance, I don't think that Cassandra was the strongest villain, but I think that's down to what we've tapped into before with regards to the more wafer thin plot, writing, etc., etc. But I wouldn't take anything away from Emma Corrin, as they've gone from playing Princess Diana, to playing a baddie in this movie. Is quite impressive.
So my favorite thing about the movie actually touches on things both of you guys said. I love the action, of course, and I love the comedy, which Paul mentioned earlier. But I wasn't expecting the variety of both of those that we got. The fight scenes were all pretty distinct and different in terms of style and choreography. And the humor, you had broad jokes that most people would get. You'd have jokes specific to longtime fans of the Fox Marvel movies, and also jokes that are so specific that only comic book readers would get. So I wasn't expecting all of that, and the amount of humor was almost at times overwhelming because there's so much content in the movie in general, and the humor just keeps hitting you. I mean, it starts from the opening scroll and doesn't end till the last frame, if you count the post-credit scene. So I appreciate that aspect of the movie. But as Marcus and I were alluding to before, there were things that we didn't like about the movie. Although I think, Paul, you had the least criticism about it. Was there anything that bothered you about the film?
mean, I understand the points about the story being thin, and I do think that it has the least interesting story of the 3 Deadpool movies.
Yes.
But I still thought the story was interesting, and it served what was going on well. And there were elements of it that I really liked. Like I liked how some of the story came out of real life. One of the things that Disney apparently said to Ryan Reynolds was, we don't care about like Vanessa and Negasonic Teenage Warhead, and you can just leave them behind. And he didn't want to. He wanted them to be in the movie. And that inspired a big part of the plot about him trying to save them. And then apparently one of the other big things was they were stuck on a story. They didn't know what they were going to do. And then Hugh Jackman, like one day just called him out of the blue and said, I want to do the movie. And like after that, apparently those two things, everything kind of fell into place. So I really appreciated that. The things that I didn't like are very minor little things. Like, I don't know why Shatterstar was there. I mean, I know how he could be there because, that makes sense canonically.
Don't deny him a residual.
Yeah, see, but he didn't do anything. He didn't say anything. And in the second movie, Deadpool basically calls him a dick. And if you were going to bring back, some old friends, obviously you can't bring Weasel back for reasons we know. But, I would have much rather seen Domino there. I would have, I would have rather seen Cable standing there, especially if they're just kind of going to hang out. And the other thing is, I really don't understand why he was divorced from Vanessa, why they broke up.
Yeah, that was a major thing for me.
My understanding of that, is that after he got turned down for the Avengers, he kind of just lost focus. He just lost the fight, lost the will to live. Couldn't figure out what he wanted to do with his life. He had his midlife crisis.
Right.
And I understood. That midlife crisis led to him being shut off from her. And that happens. That really
yeah,
does
I know.
happen.
I know that happens, and I get
me.
I know that happens, and I know that I got that, but it still seemed unnecessary to take it that far. Like they could have just shown them having problems.
Right. That's the thing too, because it's told, it's not shown. They had that one flashback scene, but that was being manipulated by Cassandra. So I did not like that. In that 6-year span between Deadpool 2 and when this movie starts. Of course, I'm sure they had some bumps in the road,
Right.
but all of it is told. You don't really see the deterioration of their relationship, which is the whole impetus of the movie, of Deadpool wanting to matter.
Well, I think it follows the second one quite well. Because at the end of the day, you got Vanessa in the start and the finish of the second one. She's more perhaps in the first one than she is in the next two. And obviously her death is in part 2. Spoilers if you haven't watched it. Jesus Christ. Her death in part 2 galvanizes him. The threat of her being wiped out, whether he's with her or not, galvanizes him again, and just goes to show the strength of his love for her, that even though she is dating someone else, he will still fight to save the world because she's in it.
Right. But even before getting to that point, should she not be more understanding of a man that is really ripped apart space and time to make sure that she's alive?
Dude, relationships are hard.
Yes.
I mean, seriously. I mean, that's the thing. This is not a Disney, prince and princess meeting. This is what happens to the greatest of love stories. That people get ripped apart. People go through crises. People withdraw themselves from partners, and then things inevitably go to shit. At the end of the day, this one, we got the ending of them rediscovering, because he rediscovered his purpose. He'd lost his purpose. He'd shut himself off from her. And there's only so much of that you can take day in, day out, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So I just think that, to me, actually made a lot of sense.
But
I am glad
it's told, though. And I mean, I guess
there's only so much time, but they didn't want to make it a 10-hour film.
Yeah.
There is one thing, though. I was very glad that the guy that she was with was not another cameo. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know who they would have gotten, but
Ryan Gosling.
Yeah, I was thinking more character wise, if it was like that really fast kid, the Quicksilver kid or something, that would felt like
Vanisher back.
Huh.
He, Brad Pitt is credited in the credits, but I don't know why.
He's invisible. You did not see him.
Oh no, I'm sorry. He's not credited. He's credited in the credits of that movie. If I'm sorry, I watched If the day after I watched Deadpool. So
was he invisible in that as well?
Is it a plan?
Yes, he did.
A Plan B movie. What? Plan B is it? Plan B is his production company. So if Plan B co-produced it,
I don't know. No, but they credit him as playing the invisible imaginary friend. There's a running gag in that movie about Ryan Reynolds always tripping over this invisible friend.
I guess that's probably, just left over from Deadpool. They were having fun with it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to throw to Marcus in a second. But yeah, my least favorite thing was the story, because it was so thin and undeveloped. Deadpool 1 and 2 both had more detailed and more nuanced stories. Logan, of course, was probably the best mutant movie of all time. So I people say, these are superhero movies. Do you really watch them for story? I'm like, to a point, yes, I do, because I read comics for stories. That was always my favorite part of comic books, not the art, although of course that enhances the story. So yeah, my biggest thing was the story being so thin, but there's so much other cool content that it makes up for it. But I would have loved just a little bit more. And how about you, Marcus? What was your least favorite part of Deadpool and Wolverine?
I would just go back to, we talked about the story, but also, the middle act. the middle act kind of felt a little bit flat. I mean, they're in the wasteland, and the only thing I can say about the wasteland is Loki did it better, in my opinion. Yes, they had all these cameos. They obviously had variants dotted around, whether it be Wolverine or Deadpool variants. But yeah, I just felt that the actual wasteland where, everybody's been dropped off, it had its little nuggets. I mean, we'd seen the Secret Wars comic book, the remains of 20th Century Fox's logo, all funny. But it didn't really have the oomph of, it didn't have perhaps that, I was expecting something grander. I mean, just to have, Giant Man, the Paul Rudd line. Oh, Paul Rudd's finally aged. But I mean, having his body be a base is a neat touch. But it's just felt still for something that so much had been crammed into, was supposed to be crammed into to be devoured by this monster thing. It just felt empty. And I think that's the thing about that second act. It felt empty to me. Strong start, strong finish, weak in the middle.
Fair enough. No, Marcus brought up the action sequences earlier, and they are fantastic. They're just so well done and a ton of variety. I'll start with you, Paul. What was your favorite action sequence?
I really like the fight in the car, the one set to the Grease song. You don't usually see fight scenes that are that close combat, where people are jammed in. Although interesting, that's what you got in the very beginning of the first Deadpool movie, was that scene where the beginning of that fight scene where they're in a car, and it reminded me a lot. And I love that scene as well. That to me was really cool. I mean, they were all really cool, but that one in particular stood out just for being different than the others.
Yeah, I love the originality of it. I was super impressed by the choreo. How about you, Marcus? Which fight scene caught your eye?
I liked them all, and I had strong bits and bobs with all of them. But I'm actually going to go with the very first fight scene, which includes the opening credits, because that where he's using, it's time for the team up pumpkin, and he starts ripping off Logan's adamantium infused body, using it as weapons, and they obviously turn that into the opening sequence or the intro sequence. And I thought that was just really great, really inventive.
Yeah.
Obviously, he straps the claws on and promptly stabs himself. And then there is actually, the choreography and the song by NSYNC, Bye. And I thought it was actually really funny. So if you go back to X2, which is obviously one of the best movies in the Fox X-Men franchise, there is a scene in that where Wolverine has got some of the kids in Scott's car, and they are driving away from Stryker having invaded the mansion, and the flame guy who's in this one, Pyro says, "I can't stand uncomfortable silences," and goes to turn on the radio, and what song comes on? Bye. And they're like, "Oh no," and they turn it off. And so to have that transferred through, I just thought that was a really funny touch. It was uniquely different to the previous two intro sequences, and I was just stunned by the creativity and how everything looked, and just chopping everybody up, and knowing that Rob McElhenney was in there getting chopped up as well.
Yes,
just added some of the deliciousness to it. So that's my vote. I mean, they set a very, very high bar, which didn't drop off in the fight scenes.
Yeah,
all the fight scenes were superb. Even when they took out Sabretooth.
Yeah,
that was just, you thought it would be long, and it's like,
nope. It was like that Indiana Jones fight with the
that back, bitch.
I completely agree that all the fight scenes were great. I almost wanted to go with the Deadpool core at the end, because there's a good chunk of it where it's all left to right, and it reminded me of like those side-scrolling games. I'm like, this is the most fucked up version of Double Dragon that I've ever seen. But I'm actually going with the fight scene where it's Deadpool and Wolvie one-on-one in the void, just because of the way they move, some of the way they hit each other. it's exactly what I saw in my head when I was reading the comics. You know, the different poses, different swings, like Wolverine getting on all fours to dodge gunfire. Like it was my comic book nerdgasm come to life. So absolutely love that.
That was like a ballet.
Yeah.
That one in particular. I mean, obviously the one in the car was also great with the close quarters. But I mean, they were so well choreographed. They were almost balletic, and they kind of reminded me of the best points for like first time playing Arkham Asylum, where you're flowing into the combos, and it just felt like that. But obviously with more sticky things and more boom things.
Now, of course, a superhero villain is only as good as its villains. Paul, you mentioned Cassandra Nova at the top. Talk about Cassandra Nova and Paradox and how those characters worked as the two bads in this movie.
I mean, you and I had a conversation a couple of days ago about this. Like, Paradox was not I think the actor was really good.
Yeah.
I didn't think that he was as formidable a bad guy as I would have liked. And I think you were like, yeah, it would have been better if we saw more of Cassandra. And that, which made me think that what they should have done is, what if Cassandra was actually the boss of Paradox? Like he was answering to her. Not that he was controlled by her.
Right. But they were doing their own things separately.
Yeah. Like, because in the movie, like they're not over, they're not working together. Like Paradox was working with Pyro. And I thought it just would have been more interesting if he was working with Cassandra, but Cassandra was like bossing him around.
That is
so.
fair.
And I've said what I've said about Cassandra, who's totally kick-ass. So
fantastic. How about you, Marcus? How do you think the villains worked?
I thought that Paradox and Matthew McFadden, who's obviously was so great in Succession and has just a bunch of great stuff. I have this sneaking suspicion that they wrote this character with a view to it almost being a studio executive at Fox, where we are trimming the timelines, we are cutting this shit. This is what we're going to do to Channing Tatum's Gambit movie. This is what we're going to do to Fantastic Four. It just felt like that. I mean, we've all been, we've all seen these things about, read behind the scenes exposés about the studio heads and the studio execs who have no idea about the creative process, and then just pulling this sort of shit. It's like, oh, here's our notes. You don't need that character. And I just thought that was a very, very subtle, and perhaps I was the only one who got it, who thought it, a very subtle fuck you to some long departed Fox people. I would have liked to have seen more of Cassandra. Again, tapped into that middle section. I felt that while Emma Corrin did an amazing job, Cassandra was just... We needed more of Cassandra. We needed a lot more. We needed, the buildup was great, but when it's like, they're coming out of the smoke and coming out of Paul Rudd's mouth. But yeah, it felt underdeveloped. It felt that more gravitas, more oomph, just needed more oomph. I mean, I think Deadpool, Deadpool 1 didn't really have a great bad guy because it was an origin story. Deadpool 2 really did. I mean, with, Cable and then, the little New Zealand kid who, starts blowing shit up. And obviously the arseholes at the boarding school for unruly youngsters. And I thought that had a great trifecta and great balance. Deadpool 2 is probably my favorite of the trilogy. But this one, it just felt that could have dropped a cameo or two, trimmed a fight scene, and given us a little more of Cassandra and her, perhaps their relationship with El Big Smoky Monster that I can never remember the name.
Elias.
There you go. Which sounds like Elias was up with I bit my tongue, but here comes Elias. Yes, I just think that I would love to have seen more Cassandra. And I hope that character hasn't gone away, because you saw it when they talked about, when Wolverine says Charles would fight for you, he would die for you.
Yeah.
You saw this level of depth, but then it was like, no, you go off. I've changed my mind. Here's the Ripper machine. I'm just going to go, and I'm going to, Thanos Galactus the entire every single timeline, and it just didn't sit right.
I feel very similarly to both of you. I liked Paradox fine, but I loved Cassandra Nova. And it's not an indictment on the actors. I think they both did really well with what they were given. But Paradox felt like that could have been played by a number of actors, whereas Emma Corrin, I thought, did something really distinct with Cassandra Nova. And that character, I don't know, the character kind of confused me in a very pleasant way. I'm like, she's obviously powerful and menacing, but she has this playful side because she's been there, like she said, before she could walk. So she has almost this childlike nature with the way she behaves, like she didn't develop in a normal society. And then, of course, she brought the sexiness thing too. I'm like, do I want a bald woman fingering my skull? Is that what I'm into now? And I'm like, why am I attracted to her? This is weird. So
that is weird.
But she has such a cool look, though. That was the thing. I mean, she had like a sort of an evil, but also kind of really cool look about her. She pulled off that baldness,
right.
Which not everybody can, whether you're man or woman. So
reminded me of the character from Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Oh, was that yes,
Ilea, who became the
the
probe for Vija.
Yeah.
And look, there's nothing wrong with having anybody having a bald villain or anything like that. I mean, those are some very creepy scenes, right? You need to go see a shrink, my friend. But just needed more. We could have actually taken a gap away from Wolverine and Deadpool to just see some more of that trauma that turned them into who they are.
Right. I mean, I think that's true for most of the characters.
Well, most of them were throwaway. I mean, think about it. It's basically these two and then maybe three others.
Yeah. Speaking of others, one of the most interesting surprises, or I was totally surprised, I wasn't expecting this at all, was Chris Evans coming back, not as Captain America, but as Johnny Storm, the Human Torch. And I love the setup for this. Logan and Deadpool look up and they see this guy in tattered robes. There's a bit of red, white, and blue on his arm. And it looks very much like the Captain America from the Earth X comic books. But no, it is not. Deadpool's waiting for him to say Avengers Assemble. He's like, say it. And instead, we get a flame on. Marcus, what was your reaction to Chris Evans?
Loved it. I mean, obviously, they've got history. Chris Evans obviously appeared in Free Guy when the shield appears. He's like, what the shit? Which was funny. I thought it was obviously a great twist, really nicely handled. Tie that into the end credit sequence. I hadn't realized that Johnny Storm was actually from Boston, because that accent just came out like crazy. But I will say that while Johnny Storm was great, seeing Johnny Storm get beaten by Pyro so quickly, I mean, come on, really? I mean, Johnny Storm is better than that. But I thought that was absolutely excellent. And it was certainly better than seeing Chris Evans perhaps as the Hydra Stomper, or as Chris Evans, Captain America, Agent of Hydra, rather, in this vast landscape. So yeah, that was a great one. There were a couple of others though that really surprised me and made me smile. But that was a great touch.
We're gonna definitely get to those later, but when Marcus and when Pyro beat him, I loved the way he fell. First, he got ballsed on the fence, then he hit his back of his head on another platform before landing pretty much face first on the ground. It was like
an episode of the Simpsons.
Yeah,
or,
very Looney Tunes. Yes, yeah. Paul, how did you feel about Chris Evans' performance, and were you surprised?
No, because I had it spoiled for me by social media. So,
bastards!
but
Boo.
I actually disagree. I like the fact that that they pitted Pyro against him and that Pyro won. Like, I thought that was like, because I couldn't figure out like why of all the characters you can bring out Pyro. And then I was like, and then they did that. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense because he can draw flame, and of course he would be the worst thing for the Human Torch.
I mean, let him get a couple of licks in first, build up his confidence, as opposed to going. I mean, I suppose it was, unexpected. He got beaten like an egg.
Yeah.
So that was a different spin on things.
But yeah, I love Chris Evans is really good. I mean, I love him as Captain America, and I think this is I really liked him as the Human Torch in this more than I ever liked him in the Fantastic Four movies.
Oh yeah,
those are just terrible. And that the death scene again. I mean, all hail Cassandra, but like holy Jesus, like that was like something out of a George Romero movie.
Yes.
All that was missing, and this is for the Buffy fans out there, is the board now. And if you remember in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, when Willow's girlfriend Tara gets shot by, I think it's Jonathan, she does exactly the same thing. She strips the skin off, and obviously not quite as gory with the entrails because it was on the WB, but yeah, that was just a great ending.
I wonder how much Chris Evans, and I mean, he looked like he was having so much fun playing this character, but we've been so used to him as being, the clean cut Steve Rogers. And now we see him as Johnny Storm, where he's creatively foul-mouthed, which tied into his death and the post-credit scene, which was fantastic. But I loved hearing that kind of language out of a man we've been used to being so clean cut for how many years now? Like almost.
Well, if you think about it, what was his first role post Endgame? It was Knives Out.
Yeah.
And he was the literal fucking bad guy in Knives Out. I mean, he was the dick, an absolute douche nozzle, and he played it so well. I think he was just happy to do a superhero movie where he didn't have to bulk up for once.
Tangent. I learned recently that Chris Evans actually turned down Captain America twice before getting talked into it by RDJ. And he said he was worried about what that level of fame would do to his privacy. But RDJ convinced him that taking this role would allow him to be able to pick and choose his roles in the future. So that was a curious little tidbit that I did not know until today. Now, guys, if you're watching this video and are having a good time, like that old Queen song, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. All those things really help out the channel. And if you really want to help out the channel, consider picking up some RPadTV gimmicks. We got shirts, phone cases, bags, tote bags, those pop socket thingies all the cool kids use on their phones. They're available on Amazon stores throughout the world. You can search on Amazon for RPadTV, or for direct links, go to rpad.tv/merch. Now back to the show.
You corporate whore.
Now we got into the larger concepts. Let's get a little more granular and more specific. The soundtrack, we mentioned NSYNC before. What was one of the other acts you mentioned, Marcus? That was pretty big, but there's just so much. Huey Lewis, Avril Lavigne, so many great songs. Marcus, what was your favorite song or two in the movie?
Hang on, here we go. So obviously I talked about the intro sequence, which is great. I mean, on the choreography, saw a little YouTube video of the chap who actually was Dance Paul.
Yes.
And he said he got a call from his agent asking him to learn the dance in 30 minutes and send a video over for a very big project. And he did. He sent this clip. It actually shows video of him learning, and it was the stomp section. He kept on getting wrong. He finally nailed it, and he sent it off. And kudos to that young man, because he was amazing. I thought how they they did everything was pretty amazing. But my favorite is one that just it sums up the early 90s for me, and it's just "This Is How We Do It" by Montel Jordan. This is a absolute banging jam. It gets people on the dance floor. It gets me sliding across the floor wherever I'm going. The music is going because back in the 90s, that was how I did it.
So I do have to take a tangent specifically about that song and how it is ruined for me as much as you
don't
love
tell
it.
me you lost your virginity to it or something.
No, probably even worse.
This is how we couldn't do it.
I followed a very beautiful girl to this event that ended up being one of those what is the fancy word for pyramid schemes now? Like whatever marketing
Multi-tier level marketing toilet thing.
So it ended up being like a multi-level marketing event, and the song they used throughout the event was "This Is How We Do It." And that
how often have I told you, stop following attractive women? They don't like it, and if they do like it, you really need to run.
Yeah. So my favorite songs actually come at the end. During the credits, they use "You're All I Need to Get By," which is one of my absolute favorite songs ever. Written by Ashford and Simpson, who people know from that "Solid as a Rock" song, but they actually penned a ton of Motown hits together, including this one. But they used what I say is the inferior version. They used the Aretha Franklin version in the credits. The original is a duet by the legendary Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell, and that version to me is definitive. So I did not pick that one. But my favorite song for the way it was used was actually when they showed that Fox montage at the end, and they used "Good Riddance" by Green Day. I mean, it's funny that they're saying goodbye to the Fox universe with "Good Riddance." I mean, that on its own, but that's also a very artsy song that's sad and somber. And
it was a nice touch, though, the way they did those behind-the-scenes footage. I thought it was a really nice sign-off.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, as bad as some of those movies were, some of them were really good, and they were tremendously important into setting up what the MCU is now. I mean, the X-Men had to crawl before Iron Man could fly, kind of deal. So it was a nice nostalgic bit of using "Good Riddance" for that montage.
What was Kevin Feige's first film?
Wasn't he assistant to Bryan Singer?
To Lauren Shuler Donner on
that's right,
X-Men film.
Right,
that's where he cut his teeth. So yeah, I'm sure that worked for him too. So he's done quite well. But yes, it's Nerd Trivia Night here on RPadTV.
And Paul, what music stood out for you?
Paul doesn't like music.
The only song that I like on the soundtrack is
Huey Lewis.
No, is "Hell's Bells."
Yes,
by AC/DC. Which I've been now ever since I've seen the movie, I've listened to this like every day. But actually, I think my favorite use of music was the NSYNC song, because it just, with everything else that was going on, it was just hilarious. That whole opening sequence and just everything, just how bloody and gory, and like him picking up like Wolverine's spine with like the skull still on it and whacking people, like that to me was like the best use of a song. Like, I don't like that song, but I liked how it was used in a jokey manner, and it fit that scene. Like if you had like a good song in that part, like it wouldn't work. Do you know what I mean? Like if you had like "Stairway to Heaven" or "Paranoid" by Black Sabbath, like that wouldn't really fit there. So.
And just so you guys know, Paul is totally lying. He does love this song. It's what his default is on his alarm clock. Wakes up
Not
to
that. He knows all the dances as well. He knows all the dances.
You're thinking of the variant, Paul, who likes pop music.
The boy band variant of
Paul Timberlake.
Yeah.
No, I think he would be one of the lesser ones.
Paul Fatone.
Yes. Paulie Fatone. So let's talk about.
What? Sorry, I was just gonna throw in a little tangent. I will always respect Joey Fatone because he did Robot Chicken, and they did a parody of a kung fu movie called Enter the Fat One. And I always liked that he was willing to let them call it Enter the Fat One, because you know that when he was a kid, he just got so much shit for that name. So
I mean,
he was great. He was great in My Big Fat Greek Wedding, the first one.
he had a small role.
He ate it up. He had more ham than a New York deli.
Yeah.
Had a small role in The Cooler, which is another fine small budget film. I'd have to say he's probably the second most famous one out of them, right? There's Lance Bass and Lance Bass
him or maybe Lance Bass. Lance Bass.
And then the other one who he's
the one who Eminem said he could get his ass kicked. Chris Kirkpatrick.
Yes.
Yeah.
They actually had that in an SNL sketch where Timberlake was playing himself, and it was the What's My Name game show, and this guy dressed as Chris Kirkpatrick came out, and Timberlake's like, it's Kirk Charlie, right?
That's good.
So let's talk about some.
Dick.
He's having a tough year. Let's talk about some variants. There were a ton of variants. There's a point in the movie where Deadpool goes shopping for Wolverines, and we get to see all kinds of Wolverines, including 5'3" comic book accurate height Wolverine, and ones from different universes. There's a crucified Wolverine from the cover of X-Men 251, which I still have. Marcus, who was your favorite Wolverine variant to see?
I'd give you three guesses. I give you three guesses, and the first two don't count.
Going with Age of Apocalypse first.
I'm going to go with the Jewish one.
That's right, Juberine. No, actually, no. My favorite Wolverine one was the Cavill one, Henry Cavill. I thought that was really funny, unexpected. People have been saying, the response from Deadpool was, "Hey, we'll treat you better than the studio down the street."
Yeah,
was great. And then if you notice when Cavill went to punch him, he did the same the cocking thing that he done in Mission Impossible. And I actually think that Cavill, he's actually the same height as Hugh Jackman, so he could actually be a really good Wolverine. Because I'm not a big fan of comic book accurate Wolverine, and people are saying Daniel Radcliffe, etc., etc. Although Kevin Feige has come up.
I thought you were going to say Danny DeVito.
Now that's a Wolverine I'd pay to see. But no, Feige has come out in the last day or so and has said they are not going to recast Wolverine for the moment, which means we may actually be getting some more Hugh Jackman
until he's 90.
He's 90. But yeah, it was definitely the Cavill one. Got to go with my Brit, fellow gamer, World of Warcraft fan, and yeah.
And you, Paul?
See, I would actually like to see Daniel Radcliffe in the role. I think he could pull it off. My favorite one was
Adamantium.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. And they're clearly doing something, because they've said that in the Captain America movie that's coming up, they find adamantium in the Sentinel. So, but anyway, my favorite was the short one, actually, because I didn't expect it, and it was just so funny, and he was just so short. Like, he was even shorter than, he was Danny DeVito's size. And if they'd gotten Danny DeVito to do it, that would have been hilarious too. But the fact that it was Hugh Jackman and he had the big hair, and that was like the funniest one out of all of those. And
I will say kudos on how they did all those covers when we saw the Hulk. And I mean, I would have loved to have seen Deadpool walking into a fight between the Hulk and Wolverine.
So, and my favorite is actually from that scene where they had the orange and brown costume. That was John Byrne, his version of Wolverine. That was the first time I read Wolverine in the comics. I didn't know him when he had the original yellow and blue. So it was already the Chris Claremont, John Byrne days when I started reading. And that was so cool to see in live action. That made me very happy. Now, Paul, I'm going to give you a guess. Who do you think Marcus' favorite Deadpool variant was?
Headpool.
Oh, yeah, Paul's not going to get this. You know.
Oh no, I know it's Welsh pool or
Absolutely.
I've seen all your
How
social.
many countries in the world that had, apart from Wales, that had their own Deadpool variant with a fucking flag across the test, the coolest flag in the world? So we've got a big fucking dragon on it. Yes, gotta say Ryan Reynolds gets huge kudos for again pushing This Is Wrexham at every single opportunity. But the fact that he put Welshpool in there, and Welshpool is actually a name of a small town in Wales. But he actually filled it with an Englishman in Paul Mullen, the Wrexham striker, who's actually a Scouser. So yeah, but I thought that was absolutely brilliant. And if I had the body for it, I'd be cosplaying as Welshpool later in the year, but for Halloween. But no, that just, you got to remember. I mean, it's something that has always been tough for people from Wales. So everybody knows Scotland, England, Ireland. Oh, I'm from this, I'm from that. I went to England, on England, Scotland, Ireland on vacation. But Wales has never really had its moment in the sun, despite Anthony Hopkins, Richard Burton, Shirley Bassey, Tom Jones, Manic Street Preachers, Super Furry Animals, a bunch of amazing bands over the years. Michael Sheen now. But it's never really had its moment in the sun until this, Welcome to Wrexham came along. And all of a sudden, people are like, oh, you're from Wales? What's Wrexham like? I was like, 3 million fucking people. You think I've been to Wrexham? It's a Tuch, which is Welsh for hole, in the north of Wales. But, I mean, I got to say, the commitment that Ryan Reynolds and Robert McElhenney have had in pushing every aspect of the Welsh culture and just doing that was some nice validation, because Wales is a beautiful little country. There are only 3 million people there. Yes, we have our shitholes, just like everybody else, but we also have one of the most beautiful coastlines in the world, and we have a rich tradition of song and food and rugby, and Merlin was Welsh, and obviously, like I said, the dragon. I mean, how cool is our fucking flag? We have our own beautiful language that is so many fucking vowels that you always win at Scrabble. So yeah, I was so pleased, so happy. My wife just she saw it the same time as me, and she grabbed my arm as if they don't jump out of your seat, because it was like. So yeah, that was my boy. I will say that Lady Deadpool looked fantastic. Headpool looked amazing. And the voices attached to them were all great, but there can be only one Welshpool.
And you, Paul, who was your favorite Deadpool in the Deadpool Corps?
I gotta go Dogpool.
Okay.
I just, the dog was just fantastic and ugly as sin, but so adorable, and that tongue, I've seen like interviews where they talk about working with the dog, and everybody just absolutely fell in love with her. She's like the sweetest little thing, and just the fact that Ryan Reynolds was literally willing to French kiss that dog for like 20 minutes. It's just, and there's even like a scene that he put up on Instagram, I think, where like the dog is just getting in there and he just loses it at one point and totally breaks character.
And Jackman also couldn't keep it together when they're filming that scene.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Awesome. I'm going with Kid Pool and Baby Pool because those are his actual children.
Yeah.
And he had one of them cursing up a storm, and get their Nepo baby status started early. I can't wait to see what these kids do next.
Well, yeah, well, I think all 4 of his kids have credits in the movie. Except one of them is credited as Hugh Jackman Wrangler, which no one's explained yet, but
could be. Now, there are a ton of cameos in this movie, including some major ones that we're going to get to later. We already discussed Chris Evans as the Human Torch, but let's start small. Out of the minor characters, or ones that only got a few minutes of screen time, who was your favorite, Marcus?
I like that they did call back to the very first X-Men movie, and the probably most or least skilled actor of the bunch in Ray Park as Toad. seeing him there surviving his, what happens to a toad when it gets hit by lightning line. Yeah, I thought it was nice to see him. I mean, there were a few of them in there, that I'm sure we'll all name, but again, perhaps a little more time to give them a line or two, or give them a little bit of something. Give them would have been really, really good, in my opinion. But yeah, it was nice to see Darth Maul in there.
Paul.
Oh God, I mean, there were like a ton. I mean, I always love seeing Jon Favreau as Happy Hogan. He's so good at that part. I was very excited to see B-15 from the TVA showed up, because I really like her and whatnot. I would probably go with Yukio though. There's something about Yukio and Deadpool together. It's literally the same joke over and over and over again, and every single time it's hilarious to me, because it's like he could have like the worst day possible, be cursing up a storm, be breaking shit, and he storms out, and then he pops his head back in, and he's like, "Bye, Yukio." Like, just
she has a smile that lifts your soul.
Yeah,
that actress when she is like, "Bye, Wade, hi, Wade." I mean, the smile is just, and it's so counter to Negasonic,
yes,
attitude. But yeah, Yukio, we all need a Yukio in our life.
We really do.
We need somebody to lift us up like that, and also be able to kick us a lot of serious ass.
Yeah.
I love that B-15 had the hots for Peter. That made me crack up so hard. When, like, I did not expect that at all, and I loved every second of that. I'm like, can we see more of that in the future one day? Maybe if they have the TVA and other movies.
Yeah. Well, that whole thing with Peter was hilarious too. When he showed up and all the variant Deadpools are like, Peter.
Yeah.
Like, they all love what they all have their own Peter and
the piercings.
Oh, God. Yeah.
I mean, I could feel every single man in the audience cross his legs at that moment in the theater. It was like a Mexican wave of legs being crossed. And go, oh no.
And doesn't he say something after she tugs the chain? He goes, "That's the best part," or something like that. I'm like, no.
What
so
about you? What's your favorite?
My favorite was Psylocke, because Psylocke is just an awesome character, and I loved it because they did not have Olivia Munn. So that was the best part, that she wasn't in this movie.
I could actually say the same about Juggernaut, because Vinnie Jones was a shit Juggernaut.
Yeah.
I'm the Juggernaut, bitch.
Yeah. Now, there are some major cameos that play more of a part in the story. Deadpool and Wolverine meet up with the Void Resistance Force, as a name I just made up for them. Paul, out of the characters, who are you surprised to see, or who was your favorite in that? We have Elektra, Blade, Remy LeBeau, and Laura X-23.
Well, we knew that Jennifer Garner was going to be in it, so that wasn't a surprise. Although I was glad to see her. I love X-23, as we talked earlier. But for me, the one that got me was Blade, because I love the original Blade movies. I own them all.
You're the biggest Blade fan I know.
Yeah, I love those movies. The Wesley Snipes movies. I even have the soundtrack CD that came with like the anime they did, like with him, like.
Hardcore.
And like seeing him show up, especially because, Blade, the third Blade movie, Trinity, Ryan Reynolds was in it, basically playing a Deadpool-ish character, like he always does.
And they did not get along.
Well, apparently, no. Like, there's a famous quote from Ryan Reynolds who's like, "I never met Wesley Snipes. I only ever met Blade." And so there's always been these stories about them not getting along. So to see them together in that movie was just like, wow, okay.
I thought he was retired. That was such a silly joke.
Yeah.
Also made me laugh.
Yeah.
Our friend Johan, the original Blade movie was the best. And if I'm not mistaken, Marvel was in a financially precarious situation at that point in time. And the Blade movie did so well beyond their expectations that it really bailed them out of having to declare bankruptcy.
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing for me with the Blade movies, if I may go off on a tangent, is there are a lot of things in that first movie that people credit The Matrix with having started. and it really wasn't because Blade came out like 6 months earlier. So it's
Right.
not like the Matrix ripped it off. Like they couldn't have known. But like people always credit like the Matrix with like popularizing like the S&M look and the mix of anime and video game stuff in an action movie. And like that always is one of those things that kind of annoys me because I'm like, no, Blade did it before the Matrix.
Right.
It's just, you know, Blade wasn't as wildly popular as the Matrix. So
Marcus, your favorite of the Resistance and the Void?
Well, I actually have two. And I mean, Paul has explained why Blade was so awesome. Seeing Wesley Snipes, that was the big surprise. And I loved every single aspect. I, like Paul, I'm a huge fan of the original trilogy. I have all three. Blade 2 is obviously seminal. I mean, it's just absolutely outstanding by Guillermo del Toro, and such great actors across the board. But I actually still liked Blade 3, especially as there was a special DVD with a extended cut that had a couple of extra endings that actually really I did enjoy. Enjoy a lot. It wasn't outstanding. I mean, it's certainly the worst of the three, but it's still not as bad as people make out. And to see that Blade walk through the door was absolutely boom. But I also have to give shout outs to Channing Tatum, who got to live out his dream as Remy. I mean, the fact that, and he was comic book worthy Remy LeBeau. I mean, he was X-Men 97 Remy LeBeau, and how he mangled the Cajun accent. The fight scenes were great with him in it.
And the jokes at his expense.
The jokes at his expense. But I mean, he got his moment. I mean, obviously, this is the movie that was in development for so long, almost as long as Deadpool. And then it got 86th in the Fox Disney buyout. So he never got his moment in the sun. So he got that. He got the action sequence. And so to see those two characters, and look, we knew, so like, you know, Daphne Keane was going to be in there as X-23. We knew Elektra was going to be in there, and it was great to see her properly kicking ass as well. I thought the Resistance Force across the board were outstanding, but seeing those two was great. I'm
going to agree with Marcus on this one, but for slightly different reasons. I like Channing Tatum a lot. I think he's hilarious. Those Jump Street movies crack me up, even though they're not particularly great. I think he's a funny comedic actor that is more handsome than most comedic actors. So he has a very specific niche for me. I do not like the comic book character, and I hate the animated version of Gambit. The accent he uses in the cartoon is so stupid. His costume makes no sense. He has this weird head band thingy and a duster for no apparent reason, even though it's really humid in Nolans.
And he's still better than the version in X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Oh, that Tyler Kitsch, was that the guy?
The Tyler Kitsch, inspired by the Droogs from a Clockwork Orange look.
That wasn't, well, there's not a lot of that movie that's very good. I mean, Will.i.am tried to act. That was not.
And Willie didn't.
Yeah. Will.i didn't. Yeah. But I loved how they poked fun of Gambit, his ever-changing accent. The Sling Blade reference cracked me up. The up-close magic cracked me up. And, you know, he did kind of get his moment, as Marcus was saying. His fight scene was really cool, even though his powers are a little bit silly in practice, but they showed them how they could be cool. I mean, does the guy really walk around with 52 cards at all times? Can he think of something better to charge up? How does he throw those cards anyway? Do they all of a sudden get weight when he adds kinetic energy to them? Because he does things in the cartoon and the comics where, like, a playing card does not go that far, man. Like, you cannot throw it like 300 yards away.
Well, the kinetic energy propels it, but how it does use its charge, that's interesting.
Yes. Biopropellant is the excuse they use.
It was definitely, I thought him playing that part, it was better than like when, and sort of analogous to when Nicolas Cage finally got to play Superman in the Flash movie.
But better.
Yeah, it was way better.
This was better than
but it was like the same idea.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
Right. The canned movie, the actor getting his moment in the canned movie. Yeah, I agree with you. But, you know, in general, this movie did everything better than The Flash.
Yeah. Yeah.
Except for maybe use of spaghetti. Although I don't know.
Let's just move on and not talk about The Flash. It's giving me indigestion.
I agree with that. So obviously, Deadpool and Wolverine are now easily accessible to the rest of the MCU, even though for now they're still living in their own little world. What do you want to see next from them? You know, what interactions are you looking to see? What do you want to see them do in the proper MCU? Marcus?
Well, I don't think we're going to get another Deadpool movie. I think that this is it. I think it was a nice sign-off. We got everything that all the fanboys and girls wanted. I think we will next see them in Avengers Doomsday, and then Secret Wars, and then that's what I think will happen, because I think Jackman is, the joke about him running till he's 90, but I just don't think he wants to be bulking up when he's 59, 60s, whatever.
Yeah. He's 55 now or something like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, these other movies are like 2 years out. First of all, Doomsday is 2 years out. So, yeah, I think we'll probably see them. It'll be interesting to see how that fits in with his third wall breaking for Deadpool.
I think it'll be like when Deadpool appears in other comics, like when he's in X-Force, for example, he talks to himself, and the other characters just dismiss him as being stupid or being crazy. So they don't really
going to happen.
Yeah,
I want to see that scene with Thor. I want to see the scene with Thor that obviously they digitally imposed him over Loki from Thor: The Dark World. But yeah, I'd like to see that, and I'm sure we'll get to see them both in Secret Wars, and it'll be all over.
Your timing is amazing, because Zach Morris says, I want to know what was going on with Thor and Deadpool in the future. So as Marcus was saying, they used old footage and put Deadpool's face on it. I think it was just a gag. I don't think there's anything that's leading up to anything. Those characters will interact. I just love how he kept waking up and be like, "You got it, Thunder." Like that. That was such a good gag throughout. And you, Paul, what do you want to see next from these guys?
I won't be surprised if we don't see them again.
Oh, we definitely will.
I mean, I think there's certainly going to be a lot of. I mean, you don't make $1 billion like as this movie obviously will. I mean, they're pulling down Kamala Harris money at this point. I think I'd like to see another team up movie with these two, but one that has a better story and is less meta. I think that's the other big thing is
one with an actual story.
Yeah. I would also love to see Deadpool with Spider-Man.
Ooh.
As we always see in the comics. I'd also love to see something with Deadpool and She-Hulk, because
they both break the fourth wall.
They both break the fourth wall, and this is one of the most comedic movies, and the She-Hulk show is one of the most comedic shows.
Yeah.
And I think that would be fun. Like, I kind of half expected her to turn up actually at some point and just be like, hey, breaking the fourth wall is my thing. I did that like 2 years ago. But that didn't happen. I just can't picture how you work Deadpool into the Avengers, because he's such a silly character, and those are always the most serious movies. And people would then expect him to make some comment about Robert Downey Jr. being Dr. Doom, but you don't want him to make that comp because that would kind of be weird.
There's actually somebody's put a cut on YouTube of Deadpool in the original Avengers movie.
I saw that.
Scene, yeah, and that actually really works. It does, because obviously they pulled stuff from his other things, but he's like Zip It, Black Widow, and this, that, and the other.
Right.
And they actually, the way that is cut, that could actually serve as a great template, because we need some wild card in there. But I would say that, I mean, either they hit both of them, both movies, or one of them dies in the other, in Doomsday.
I'm going to piggyback on something Paul said. I really want to see Deadpool and Spider-Man, because those guys have a really long and hilarious history in the comics, and I want to see how they translate it to the MCU versions. I mean, it's easy to make fun of Tom Holland, so I'm sure Ryan Reynolds can come up with some great stuff.
Did you see what Anthony Mackie did at Comic-Con?
Oh yeah. That
was funny.
I mean, it's still, I'm gonna guess that Holland will still have the box office numbers over him, and that will continue their little playful feud they have together.
Yeah, I think it's funny. They obviously have a lot of fun with it. So,
and I liked watching Harrison Ford literally kick Mackie in the ass.
Yeah,
I'm like, wow, he's spry for 80.
I'm looking forward to New World Order next year and Thunderbolts. Yeah. I think they're both going to be very interesting.
Ooh, a proper Wolverine versus Hulk fight. That would be tremendous.
That would be
fantastic stuff. So, last question. Going into this movie, I kind of had expectations that, this might change things for the MCU. And it did to an extent, but not to the extent that I was expecting. They obviously saved more of that for Comic-Con. And this was more, instead of introducing a new layer to the MCU, this was more of a goodbye to Fox. Now, Paul, did this change the possibilities of the MCU for you?
No, because I agree with you. It was more of a sort of wrapping up the Deadpool verse and the Fox verse than really having anything to do with the MCU. I think they could have done something, where Deadpool ends up in the MCU and they do a much bigger deal with that, but they really didn't.
Right.
But there are things that I hope they do. Like, I hope somehow Daphne Keene's X-23, or a version of her doing that character, ends up in the MCU. But I guess, I have faith that they will work it out and that it will be interesting.
If Johan has his way, we'll see more Colossus in the MCU. So that is a cool take.
I do like the guy that plays Colossus in the Deadpool movies. I like him more than any of the Colossi.
Well, for a fact that for start, he does the fucking Russian accent.
Yeah,
which is great.
I think he referred to them in multiple as Colosseums. Paul. I think
yeah, I want them to bring over Yukio and Negasonic. I'd like to see more of her in these things. And I love the scenes in the first Deadpool with Negasonic and Colossus.
Yes. Or as he says, Negasonic. So,
yeah.
How about you, Marcus? How did this change the potential of the future of the MCU? Or did it for you?
I think this is the beginning of the end of the multiverse.
Oh,
I think we are looking at 3 films that maybe 4 films actually. There's this one, Fantastic Four, and then we go into Doomsday, and then we go into Secret Wars. And I think Secret Wars will be the end of the multiverse. Battleworld will be ripped from. Assuming they go with Battleworld and OG Secret Wars, and not the vastly inferior.
They are doing the more recent, was 2015 or something like that?
I think they've changed. I think they might have changed up on that, because that cover that was there was OG Secret Wars. And I think because that guy was the person who was supposed to be writing it is the one who did Ant-Man and Wasp, Quantum Mania, and he now gone. So I think they might be changing this up. So obviously
Kang's gone.
The Russos are now in and have their own ideas, obviously. But I would like to see. Maybe it could be a mix of them, mix of the two. But I would see ripping Battleworld from various universes. It becomes then a Crisis on Infinite Earths kind of thing. Pull it all together, and then everybody. As part of one of the ramifications is all the other universes go bye-bye, and then moving forward, we've got one coalesced MCU where the Fantastic Four live in New York and Spider-Man, and there'll be the opportunity for some recastings and some rebooting.
Yeah,
because obviously we know there are characters in there. I will say, and I said this to you the other day after we talked about the surprise announcement.
Yeah,
I really hope that this surprise announcement gives us a chance to see Tom Cruise as the Tony Stark variant, because that would be pretty cool. But yeah, that's what I think they need to do. And they've touched on it at the end of Marvels. We need, we know that the mutants are there, and we know adamantium's coming, as Paul mentioned.
Right.
So yeah, pull it all together, trim it up, and then we're looking at a new MCU after Secret Wars.
So Zach Morris adds that he heard they're doing a hybrid of the Secret Warses. So
Great.
I mean, yeah, why not
Second
take
one,
elements
shit.
from both? I don't know. I mean, I think that might be a thing with our age. Like people around our age like the OG one, but younger comic fans really love the 2015 one.
Yeah, but we're talking about some of the best comic books ever written in our era.
I agree.
We are of that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This isn't Wakanda Forever. This is Gen X, motherfuckers. And
we played on the streets.
We played on the streets, drank from hoses, and smeared dog poop on each other.
And look at us now.
The one thing they missed out on, it would have been lovely to have a Wolverine in the black outfit from the very first X-Men movie. I don't think they had that in the variants. I think they missed out on that. That would have been funny.
Leatherine.
Mm-hmm.
So, guys, this is going to wrap it up for our Deadpool and Wolverine discussion. Paul, Marcus.
What do you think?
I said what I thought. It changed it not as much as I thought it would. I was expecting more, but then
I was expecting more from your response. So there you go. All right.
Yeah, no, Comic-Con was the real reset with the possibilities there. Speaking of which, we are going to be talking about Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom in a few weeks. But next week, Paul and I are going to return for a House of the Dragon review. And then I have forced him to watch the Borderlands movie. So we're going to talk about that the week after that. And then hopefully...
Can I come back for that one?
Borderlands, really?
Oh, yeah. I got AMC pass. I go see
shit all the time now. No, I'd love to
go because that movie looks so fucking bad. I mean, it really does. Looks fucking awful.
I mean, you can come back anytime you want, but I did not think anyone was interested in this.
Oh, no, I'm going to watch that pile of shit so I can say it's a pile of shit.
Okay.
And obviously, I would love, as you know from our texting, because Ray's the one who broke the Robert Downey Jr. news to me, and I was like, what the fuck? Ray's been vaping the wrong shit again. He's been vaping the fucking Tide Pods. So yes, I have thoughts on that too. But anyway, thank you for having me on.
And very end of August, I am hoping I can convince someone else to watch Time Bandits because I'm really enjoying that series on Apple TV Plus, and it has surprised me.
Conflicted, my friend. I mean, Terry Gilliam forever. Taika Waititi. Fucking hack compared to Terry Gilliam.
But he is not doing the writing. He's a producer. Jermaine Clement is actually writing.
Still not fit to lace Terry Gilliam's boots.
I mean, not many people are. So
yeah. I mean, some things are sacrosanct. Again, that's my childhood. Some things are sacrosanct. You don't fuck with. What's next? The remake of Baron Munchausen? Fucking Cardi B.
You just gave them an idea, Marcus. That's so going to happen now. And we'll be talking about that in 3 years on RPadTV. Guys, remember, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, especially. Love to hear what you thought about Deadpool and Wolverine. And we will see you next time. Take care for now. Bye.